All right, then. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the roundtable discussion on. Let me just get my information in front of me. Correct? Where is it? Yeah, it is the ASEAN Economic Forum and GIZ Policy Roundtable, and the subtitle for today's roundtable is "Bridging Borders, Digital Trade, and Economic Integration in ASEAN." So before I proceed further, I would like to just invite Sachin to address us with a few words. Sachin?
Thank you, Harish, and a very good morning to all of you who are our participants today's roundtable. I'd like to especially thank Sita Zimple from the GIZ for putting together a very interesting program, which we hope to continue across the year. This topic actually is very connected to the DEFA agreement that is being put together by the ASEAN Secretariat, and I would like to share a few thoughts on the importance of what we're doing today here. If you look at ASEAN as a region, geographically it's spread out quite widely, and the 10 countries are, to be honest, really connected only digitally. Transportation, logistics are all challenges. So if ASEAN were to be getting the full potential of its growth, it would come from digital commerce, it would come from digitalization, it would come from digital trade. And bridging these borders digitally is, I think, going to be one of the most important way forwards to build the regional economies, especially because of the logistics of how the nations are situated geographically. So I think this discussion here would be a starting point of how the true realization of the potential of ASEAN can be achieved through discussion, advocacy, and also getting ideas from the industry in order to give good input to the policymakers in the region, as well as to the several program and projects that are being run here, especially from Germany. There's a lot of contribution that can come from the expertise that is available around the region, around the rest of the world. So we should look at digital trade not just being within ASEAN, among the 10 countries, but also should be connecting ASEAN to the rest of the world. And the true potential would lie from a two-way trade, both from ASEAN to outside and from the rest of the world into ASEAN. So with that, I'd like to really welcome you to have a really good discussion. We would be able to share these insights with the rest of the world once we have completed it through our digital channels, which is another example of how digitalization is really connecting the region. So thank you and very much, and over to Harish to continue.
Yep. Thank you, Sachin. So just to introduce and set for the record as well, so Sachin Gopalan is the chair of the ASEAN Economic Forum, so that he was one of those individuals who helped push this forward and has helped establish this as well. So what I would like to do is now also call upon Sita Zimpel. She is representing GIZ, which is a German organization that helps with international commerce and development. So for a few words, so Sita, over to you.
Okay, hello, good morning everyone. Also good morning online to all of the speakers and participants that have taken the time to join us here in this policy roundtable, where, as Sachin has rightly said, we are intending to bridge borders, if you will, not only within ASEAN but also beyond. I'm very fortunate to be at this beautiful location here, if you will, the headquarters of the ASEAN Economic Forum, and happy to partner with Ashish and also have Harish here as our moderator for the discussion here. A couple of words perhaps by way of background, what brought us here, who we are. For those of you who are not familiar with GIZ, we are an international development corporation agency. The long name of GIZ is Deutsche Gesellschaft für Internationale Zusammenarbeit, so you can see it's German there coming in. We're funded by the German government, and we have a long-standing history of working with ASEAN for more than 10, almost 15 years already, particularly in the area of regional economic integration. I'm right now focusing myself with my colleagues on topics such as SMEs and cross-border trade, but also policy issues, competition, consumer protection. They're going to continue to be very relevant as well as we look towards the potentials, the prospects, but also the challenges that arise with the digital economy in ASEAN. Usually, how do we work with ASEAN? A couple of words also to frame our discussion here. We usually have three elements or components of our projects where we try to also accommodate, if you will, the way ASEAN works, the ASEAN way. First component is always facilitating or supporting regional dialogue and cooperation. That's where we're working very closely with the ASEAN Secretariat. We're working with different sectoral bodies, as we say, committees, working groups, deriving initiatives from work plans, regional strategies that need to be discussed and where we need to also accentuate and have a better awareness and understanding of what are the commonalities and differences looking at the policy landscape in the region. That, of course, is just one part. Second part is always how can we bridge the implementation gap? Anyone who has worked with ASEAN would know that much of the discussion takes place behind closed doors in, if you will, the ivory tower of the sectoral working groups. So we need to also see how can we, in member states like Vietnam, like Cambodia, that are further afield from the ASEAN Secretariat here in Jakarta, how can we draw attention to the importance of ASEAN commitments and also make sure that countries are prepared to participate in regional initiatives and follow up where necessary with all the impulses set from the regional agenda in national reform processes. Last but not least, and that actually is what brought us here, Harish and Ashish, we want to make sure that we're not just discussing these important initiatives at the government level. The private sector is a key driver for, as you rightly said, Sachin, for growth here in the region. And how can we expand perspectives? How can we expand engagement? That's the third component of our projects, where we also then thought, okay, this partnership with the ASEAN Economic Forum can be very timely because you have the strong network focus orientation towards the private sector that definitely needs to be brought in to highlight what are trends, but also demands and dynamics on the ground. So this is how we came in here. We're very grateful for this cooperation. And we chose the topic of the digital economy because the numbers speak for themselves. I don't have to reiterate it, and I think the speakers will later also perhaps have more to share there. But suffice to say at this point, the digital economy is going to be valued $1 trillion by 2030, estimates say. So there's a lot that we can tap into as businesses, but also a lot that consumers can benefit from when it comes to digital economy and digital trade moving forward in the coming years. And we see, of course, all these good things, but we also have to be very much aware or mindful of where do we see limitations, where do we see gaps and challenges, particularly to leave no one behind in the business sector, what are the small and medium-sized enterprises. GIZ is very closely working with enterprises that wish to expand their operations across borders. We have the so-called ASEAN Access Platform, through which we also stream, we also later share this roundtable, policy roundtable discussion. And there we see, okay, there are persistent issues that are faced by the SMEs in order to capitalize on these opportunities in the digital as well as the analog economy. And that's access to finance, you know it, access to finance, access to technology, access to networks and market information and so forth. And we bring these challenges into the digital economy from the analog economy. And on top of that, we pile also the needs for policy reforms in relation to cross-border trade. You mentioned this is a very diverse region. Member states are very heterogeneous when we're looking at the institutional frameworks, when we're looking at the maturity of policies, particularly when it comes to the digital space. And so there's a lot that we need to still align, where if you're looking at countries of similar population size like Singapore and Laos, PDR, it's not apple to apple, obviously. No? So there's a lot that needs to be done on that front, where we need to also align the different paces at which ASEAN member states are willing and able to move forward. So having said this, then again, where do we stand with respect to the digital economy? If we take a bit of a helicopter view, I'm often reminded of the parable of the blind man and the elephant. I don't know if you know about it. It's systems thinking, communications, that sort of thing. In a nutshell, it's really, we have blind men that have never had any prior knowledge or conception of what an elephant looks like. But then at some point, they come across the elephant, and every one of these blind men touches only one part of the elephant. One touches the tail, one touches the trunk, another touches the tusk, or the leg, and then everyone is, of course, wondering what it is that they have in front of them. And everyone has a different idea, a different conception. One thinks, okay, this tail, could it be a rope? Or the trunk is moving, is it a wiggling snake or something like that? So everyone has also ideas of their own, perspectives of their own, and maybe misconceptions to some extent, or limited conceptions. And now, taking this to what we want to discuss here today, this is not to say that ASEAN policymakers are blind men. It's just that everyone has a little bit of a piece. We have a lot of moving parts when we're looking at the current digital agenda of ASEAN, where a solid foundation has already been laid, but perhaps more could be done to bring and to bind these different bits and pieces together, right? So like the different types or the different kinds of information the blind men possess, how would they make up the full or the bigger picture of the digital economy and digital trade? What do we need also to make this work? And so I'm hoping that in this policy roundtable, we may not be able to have all of the answers, but hopefully we can have the right questions, or we can raise the right questions to feed into the wider discussion that could address the elephant in the room in its entirety. So how do we actually make the digital economy and digital trade in ASEAN work? So that's, I think, perhaps in a nutshell, how I would like to set the scene for our discussion. I'm very much looking forward to hearing from all of the speakers, particularly from the private sector. We have not enough exposure to what actually is working well from your point of view, and what we could learn also and bring into, perhaps recommend to relevant policymakers in the member states later on. With this, back to you.
Thank you.
Harish. Thank you.
Thank you, Sita. That was a very useful introduction to GIZ and what your expectations and objectives are in participating in this event. As part of the entire effort here, we are, centering the discussion and also the idea generation and probably action items that should come out of a session like this around the ASEAN DEFA document that was released last year. So with that in mind, I would like to now invite Sivaram Subramanian, who is the Assistant Director for Digital Economy Division for an ASEAN Secretariat, to walk us through and set the context for us of what DEFA is, and also what are the aspects around DEFA that is useful for us to consider at this roundtable. Siva, over to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. A very good morning to everyone. As been introduced, my name is Sivaram. I'm the head of ASEAN the Digital Economy Division in the ASEAN Secretariat. Now, I know the topic will be very much centric on the ASEAN DEFA, and I do have some slides to show. Perhaps can we project the slides? Is that possible? Right. So very quickly, I think just to give a background, if you just go to the next slide, just to give a background that the ASEAN Digital Economic Framework Agreement, or better known as ASEAN DEFA, the negotiation was basically launched at the 23rd ASEAN Economic Community Council in September 2023. And the aim at that point of time, and still the same, which is to complete or conclude the negotiation by 2025. Right. So if I just, I think I'll just go straight to the next few slides. Can we go next slide, And these are public documents. Can you just go to the next slide, please? Next slide. I'm just going to go straight. Okay, right. So how do we come out with the ASEAN DEFA? Basically, under the Bandar Sri Begawan roadmap, this was a roadmap that was endorsed by the ASEAN economic ministers in 2021. And one of the key areas under the Bandar Sri Begawan roadmap is for us to go into a digital-only agreement within the ASEAN region, which we call it a DEFA. Now, before we go into the negotiation, a study was conducted in beginning of last year, And these are the 5 key guiding principles that the study has adopted. So number 1, we have to be impact first. That means any negotiation that's been done, it has to bring a tangible impact, especially for the businesses and people within the ASEAN region. The agreement also must be inclusive, ensure inclusive growth for ASEAN, where it does not even just look into regulators, policymakers, but it's also involved the participation of businesses, citizens across income sectors and gender groups. The agreements, ASEAN has done many agreements in our FTA, e-commerce and digital trade has been part of the agreement that we have done, part of the chapters. So what we are doing is we don't want to just duplicate, copy and paste with our existing agreement. So we want to build on the progress made by ASEAN on the current commitments. So we want higher commitments where it goes to number 4, where it has to be a forward-looking. What does forward-looking means? We wouldn't want the agreement to be signed off by maybe 2026, and then technology moves very fast, it evolves very fast. We wouldn't want by the time you sign the agreement it's already obsolete, right? So whatever the agreement that they're going to sign, it has to be future-proof and forward-looking, where it can go by for another 5 to 6 years. And ultimately, what is very important is bring tangible benefits, whereby business and people in the region, can operationalize, can take the principles that have been negotiated in the ASEAN DEFA, and can operationalize through use cases to come up with the concrete digital initiatives. Right? So these are the 5 key principles that that ministers agreed before we started the DEFA study. Next slide, please. So with that, I think I'm just going to go through this. So it was very clear that it has to be impact driven, it has to be inclusive, and it has showed tangible benefits. What we did, we actually put forefront the private sector, the importance of engaging with the private sector, right, to get their inputs on how DEFA, a legally binding agreement, can help them. So if you look at the second column, we actually engage with more than 2,000 MSMEs. We also engage with more than 60 large corporations, and of course the business joint councils such as US, ABC, and so on, because they have the connection with the the respective countries who is operating in ASEAN, right? So with that, we come up with the last column. You can see we came up with the 9 key ASEAN DEFA agreements. Can we just go to the next slide? So these are the 9 areas that the study has recommended. So these are publicly available. You can download this document, or even if you Google ASEAN DEFA, you can find all these documents. So it range from digital trade to cross-border, to cross-border e-commerce, to cross-border data flows, and so forth. Now, let me just explain a little bit more detail. These 9 core provision can be further bucketed into 4 main areas. So if you go to the next slide, so essentially what ASEAN DEFA is trying to do is, number 1, the agreement should accelerate growth, especially digital growth within the region. And this is where the 2 provisions on digital trade, where it talks about how do we do an electronic document exchange in the interoperable processes, and also cross-border e-commerce, which we look into custom processes, how do you expertise low-value shipments, how do you go away with custom duties, and so forth. So these 2 provisions, mainly, the aim is to accelerate the growth, GDP growth, as well as digital growth. Number 2, if you look at below, any systems that involve cross-border trade. So this got to do with your payment system, cross-border payment system, we got to do with e-invoicing, or digital identity, or even digital trade. It all has to be interoperable. What does that mean? You need to adopt international standards so that it's interoperable, so that it can connect among all the 10 ASEAN countries. And more importantly, not just 10 ASEAN countries, eventually you need to connect the world, which is the US, to Denmark, and so forth. Yeah. The next slide. Now, while we talk about digital growth or economic growth, we also must be cautious that we must ensure that the responsible digital growth needs to be in place. So this is where some of the key elements, the principles or negotiation that's happening now, also talks about the cross-border data flows and data protection, which is a fundamental when it comes to digital economy. And also, as you all know, the cybersecurity and online safety has been evolving. It's becoming very important. So this is also a topic that's been seriously being negotiated under ASEAN DEFA. Now, the last area is mainly on strengthening cooperation. I think Sita mentioned in the opening remark that many ASEAN countries, we have the maturity, the readiness, all at different stages. We cannot compare Singapore together with, Laopedia or, Vietnam and so on. So we are all at the different stages. So cooperation is really important, especially in the area of emerging topics. Over here, we are talking about technologies like AI, cloud computing and so forth. We also recognize the talent among the ASEAN member states. Now, the 10 countries varies, right? So therefore, the talent mobility and cooperation is also important. And finally, competition policies. So we are a nation where we attract investment, and therefore, when it comes to digital investment, there should be a fair game play, right, between the domestic industry and international industries. So the 9 DEFA can be categorized into these 4 buckets. So this is just a brief one. So basically what happened is 9 elements, like I said, was launched at the 23rd ASEAN Economic Committee meeting. And this, when it was launched and endorsed, it was without prejudice. Because end of the day, it has to go back and go into a negotiation and it has to be agreed by the ASEAN member states. So that's a quick presentation. So over to you, back. Thank you.
Thank you, Sivaram. That's a good high-level view of what DEFA is, the various aspects, the things that we need to look at. And I think you also mentioned one of capacity considerations. So I think this is an important component. So we can do all that we do, and if we don't have capacity to deliver on it, then we have a huge problem on hand. So I think with that, what I would like to do then is to it's a bit of a challenge because I have 2 panelists here with me in person, and everybody else who's a panelist is online. So I have to bounce between in front of me and those who are coming in virtually. So what I would like to do then first is let me go virtual to the the first speaker here, and I will call upon Hilmi Adrianto. He's the chair of the Indonesian E-Commerce Association. Hilmi, I hope you are online, and if you are, what I'd like to do is to, given the fact that Sivaram just mentioned that we need to ensure cross-border trade and making sure that we are able to do this securely and safely, what would your comments and concerns be around the e-commerce component of ASEAN trade from that perspective? Oh, okay. So I've been just told that Hilmi is going to be coming in a bit later. So what I'll do then is I'll hold off his question when he arrives, and I will now therefore invite. Hang on, let me just get my documents in front of me. I would like to invite Ashish Kapahi, who is the CEO of ASEAN Economic Forum, to have a few words and explain what we are trying to achieve with this series of roundtables we've been holding all these in the last 1 year. So Ashish, over to you.
Thanks, Harish. Good morning, everyone. ASEAN Economic Forum, as you all know, is an independent and an autonomous socio-economic development organization which focuses on outcome-based programs. And we work with the ASEAN Secretariat closely on most of their charters, but we go much beyond that. Most of the programs that we work on are outcome-based. And to touch on that, very quickly, I'll run you through a program that we ran earlier last month called the ASEAN Scale Hub. The objective of this program was to track and give the scale-ups in the region, the tech scale-ups in the region, an opportunity to expand. Now, we only focused on 100 scale-ups. There are about 50,000 odd startups in the region. We picked up 100 of them and gave them an opportunity to expand in the region by connecting them to tech channel partners and the ecosystem partners, larger ecosystem partners like the AWSs, GCSs, and Microsofts of the world. At the end of the program, at the end of the summit which we launched, we were tracking 280 opportunities, and that will culminate probably into about 30 to 40 cases which have formed cooperation. And that essentially results into revenue for all the participants across border. Now, these are the kind of opportunities that we want to track because there is a very strong digital element here. Touching on what Sita said, and I think she made a very, very interesting analogy between blind men and the elephants. That is also very true for AI in this case, because today all of us have a very different perspective of AI. And I think the objective of this discussion is also to touch upon things like AI and various other new technologies that are there and how will they impact ASEAN. Now, I want to start off by focusing on the MSME sector in particular here, because MSMEs are the backbone to any economy. And if you look at ASEAN, with 720 or 730 million people population expected by 2030, we are looking at an economy size of almost 7.5 trillion. 1 trillion of that would come out of digital economy, although DEFA should push it to 2 trillion. Creative economy, which will again be fueled by the digital economy, would probably be between 10 to 15% of the entire economy size. We have total workforce of 280 million people here. Now, as I said, the backbone to an economy is the MSME. And we look at MSMEs. I'm sorry, am I audible? Did you hear me? Okay. Hello. Yeah. The backbone to an economy is the MSMEs. ASEAN has 70 million MSMEs, which account to 97% of all the organizations within ASEAN. It provides 85% employment in ASEAN and but 10 to 15% of all the exports. Now, unfortunately, only 40% of these are bankable. No, my mistake. 40% of them are unbankable. That's the correct figure, which is a large amount. Now, why are these unbankable? It's not that we do not have the financial institutions in ASEAN. And I want to explain to you in detail why these are unbankable. But before that, I also want to touch on another segment, which is the agricultural segment in ASEAN. And agriculture accounts to about 100 million people being employed in that sector. Globally, agriculture employs 1.5 billion people, and in spite of that, there are 800 million people worldwide who still don't get 2 meals. Just imagine 1.5 billion people being employed in that sector, and there's still so many people who are starving. Now, coming to all this, and I'm touching on AI here, as we said, the blind man and the elephant analogy. While AI has a positive impact in ASEAN, there will be 23 million fewer people required because of the automations that are coming in place in the next 5 to 7 years. And that, in particular for job losses, accounts to about 6.6 million job losses in ASEAN. At this stage, I want to come back to the MSME segment and talk about why the MSMEs have not been financially included. See, one of the most important things is the cost of bankability. What we realize is that the current banking infrastructure that we have is extremely inefficient, and the cost of operating an account today, a regular account, makes it prohibitable for the MSMEs to have a bank account. Now, in the MSME, the micro segment, which is the segment right at the bottom of the pyramid, we also call that the gig economy. The gig economy today has an income of anything between an average income per capita income of, sorry, not per capita, average monthly income of say $100 to $500. Now, for any bank to service an account which has a cash transaction of $100 to $500 is prohibitive, because the cost of maintaining that account is much more. So what has happened is that there are solutions to this, and there are different tried and tested solutions. There is the interesting thing is that these people don't need a full bank account. What they need is a concept called SICO, which is cash in, cash out account, and that doesn't have to be a full-fledged account. It can be just a transaction account. This has been tried and tested in India through the UPI, which is the Unified Payment Interface, instant mobile payments. There is no cost to the user here, and they get direct benefit transfers into the account. So one of the solutions that we would recommend is to consider having a financial inclusion plan as a part of the larger DEFA discussions, where you have a digital financial solution that works on a technology-based solution that provides a direct benefit transfer to the end customer, which is the micro segment in this case. And this will help us build a much larger digital framework or accessibility for ASEAN. Now that's the main point that I was trying to make here, and I sort of spun the story around the different cases. What we need is, now to do this, we need a few things. Most importantly, we need common standards. And because without common standards, digital IT, security, without these standards, this will not be possible. Second thing is we need infrastructure. Then we need regulations. Most importantly, what we need is the digital and financial literacy, because without digital financial literacy, we will never be able to implement this. Now, that comes into capacity building. And capacity building, and there is a very interesting point here from a capacity building perspective. I think India managed to open 400 million accounts in less than 5 years. The total penetration of mobile phones, smart mobile phones in India is about 45-46%. Now, if I compare that with ASEAN has about 65% penetration of smart mobile phones. So if they could do it, I think it's easily replicable here in ASEAN as well, that we could come up with a digital financial literacy plan that can be replicated in a similar manner. And then the next stage would be to look at a financial inclusion plan with the UPI or the DBT kind of a system that we're looking at. So I want to rest my case here with this. I think I've already said enough. Back to Harish. Thank you.
Thank you, Ashish. Many things were mentioned. I think just for the sanity of most of us, there's a lot of acronyms being used. So that we all understand what the different acronyms are. MSME stands for micro and small and medium enterprises. So just so that you understand what that means. And so Ashish was highlighting the micro and focusing on the gig economy participants within ASEAN. So I think it's important to have the context there as well. So given what he has just said, and I think it's the right time now to probably bring Andy Nguyen from Vietnam. Andy, given what has just been said in terms of how we should be growing the economy from a digital inclusive and a financially inclusive perspective, I would like to hear from you, your perspective on how do we, let me just get my document in front of me. Let's get the right one here. It's right here. Okay. So the idea here is to understand how, from your perspective, is as Dream Incubator for Southeast Asia, how would you address and get this concept of digital inclusion from a financial perspective moving forward? Over to you, Andy.
Oh, thank you, Harris. First of all, thank you for extending your invitation to me. Sorry I couldn't join you guys version. So first of all, maybe a little bit about the background we do in the region. Although the name indicates we do something as an incubator, but it's not the case, because our partners and clients are mostly governments and large companies, but we have also exposure to the universe of MSMEs, as well as startups in the current business landscape in Asia. So I think addressing your comment on the let's say emerging trend in terms of digital transformation, cross-border e-commerce as the foundation for financial inclusion, I think maybe we need to talk about the challenges from the perspective of the SMEs as the main, let's say, target of consideration. I think from our experience working with global companies, they always, although they are big companies, but one of the biggest strategies they have is to try to maybe integrate the people in the value chain, regardless of the sector they are in, whether it is about automotive industry, electronic, consumer electronic industry, or garment and textile industry. So one thing in common is that most of the partners we work with, they always want to figure out such a way for them to integrate other people, other stakeholders on the same platform, in the same value chain, on the same platform. And therefore, financial inclusion in this particular context of what we do, it is part of the consideration. And typically it comes after the stage of understanding the pain points of the SMEs. So I would like to talk about, first of all, giving that background, I would like to talk about the challenges and the expectations of SMEs from our understanding first. So particularly SMEs in Southeast Asia, they all know about the trend of digital transformation, and they also have a need to expand regionally, and how to capitalize the emergence of e-commerce, as well as the relevant services provided by other ecosystem players. So I think there are a few important aspects about the challenges from the perspective of SMEs. First of all, when a supplier from one country, they want to expand their business to serve the same customers, assuming the customers are global. I take an example like the textile business, right? Global buyers are typically the brands like Nike, Adidas, and like Japanese brand like Uniqlo. Right? So they have more than 10,000 suppliers across Southeast Asia. So some companies are better than others. So in some cases, they want to expand their coverage from one country to another, even selling to the same customer. But when they think about expanding the business regionally, the first challenge is to understand the market difference. I think market diversity is one way. and in most cases they don't have the capacity, neither do they have the right talent pool to tailor different or customize a different approach for them to enter a new country, especially moving from, for example, moving from Vietnam to Cambodia in order to source for new suppliers. And the second one is after the challenge of understanding different market perspectives, the characteristics. I think the second challenge is about how to reach out to more customers. Logically speaking, the SMEs in general, they have certain limitations in terms of capabilities designated for marketing, sales, and development. So, meanwhile, we have seen a lot of, I would say, platforms providing relevant e-commerce solution. So, how to maximize this, the exposure to market by partnering with platforms. In most cases, is always the challenge for SMEs. It's not just about listing products on a specific website and sell, but how to utilize certain e-commerce, tech-enabled e-commerce services to improve the business. And for that reason, finance comes into play, because without sufficient data about the transactions between MSMEs and their customers, basically financial service providers are pretty hesitant to offer credit or banking services to those people, because in order for a financial institution to consider a specific loan or credit products to SMEs, what they care the most about is not yet the return on the profit from the business, but the risk associated with the micro credit product they offer. So I think by considering the three, I think, fundamental factors I mentioned, maybe first of all, how we can have an overview of the challenges of SMEs from their commercial perspective in terms of understanding market and partnering with the right people for their business expansion. And then the second aspect would be, a tool to facilitate the interaction between not only SMEs, their customers, but financial service providers. And the last one would be, something like an innovative solution to be in the form of a product, a credit product, payment solution, or even at the fundamental stage, KYC technology to have facilitate the interaction among the stakeholders would be the three fundamental aspects for us to solve, for us to facilitate the business development of SMEs. Haris, all over to you.
Thank you, Andy. I think that's very useful comments that you have provided. I think you mentioned the idea of a platform, and I think that does bring us very nicely to invite Jamie Koh. She's the Director, Regional Public Affairs and Policy at Grab in Singapore. I think Jamie, when we spoke about the kind of things that the Grab is doing already in Singapore, and also from a region perspective, we did, you did say that you can be in Singapore and order something to be delivered, in Jakarta for that matter. So I think that is a very interesting using your platform. So I think that's a very interesting idea. Now, so what Andy had said in terms of market reach and understanding the customers across borders, do you think from your perspective, in addition to what other areas that you may be useful and appropriate, how could, in this case, Grab support something like that as a platform, for a start? Over to you, Jamie.
Thank you so much, Harish. I think this is a good question, and let me just give some context in case there are people who may not be familiar with Grab. Grab is an online marketplace platform which serves users from multiple sites. I think it has services on mobility, deliveries as well. So imagine there are consumers ordering things on an app. You can either order for a mobility ride to get you from place to place, but you can also order food delivery, like what Harish said. Then there are also therefore merchant partners who fulfill these orders, and delivery partners or driver partners who fulfill either a food order or food delivery order or sending someone to another place. So that's a bit of context of Grab as an app where you can do all these things and we match all the different sides of the marketplace together. So I think it was also actually super helpful that you all make the introduction that actually platforms play an important role to help MSMEs digitalize. So I guess I wanted to share a perspective of, I think on Grab at least, there are more than 6 million registered merchant and kiosk agents registered to be able to access the platform to earn income. More than 6 million registered driver and delivery partners as well. And in fact, in 2023, more than 500,000 MSMEs, merchant partners registered on our platform. So I think that's where we see that, smaller businesses actually benefit from using the investments that we've made as a platform to help them access the digital economy. I like what the previous speaker was sharing about. It's not just about going online, but also helping businesses thrive online as well. And I think when we learned in COVID, I think during COVID, that was really the first step that a lot of MSMEs took to go online, when a lot of them didn't have online presence at all. And so I think it did help that platform had a really suite of tools where instead of having to build your own website, figure out your own logistics, figure out payments, MSMEs were able to quickly go on digital platforms to be able to reach consumers when honestly things were it was a lockdown situation then when people couldn't go out. But I think thriving online requires a lot of other things, and just giving examples from Grab, we see ourselves as having a digital toolbox to power their business and growth. Things like helping them access a wide consumer base that is available on a platform. Things like helping them figure out how they can do ads on a platform, how they can do marketing, and use a tool like a marketing manager. Things like how can they get insights on what are more popular items that tends to be ordered on deliveries. All these kind of insights to harness and grow your business on a digital platform. Those are actually really important tools to help them grow. I think just now there was talk about financial inclusion as well, and I think as there's more activity on the platform, then there becomes more data available for the platform to then be able to support and work with partners to offer products like lending as well. So I think a lot of this is really a virtuous cycle. As there's more economic activity, there's more information, then there's a lot more support that we can help MSMEs grow as well. I think Harish, you alluded to this feature I was going to share about, which is actually, if I'm sitting here in Singapore, I can order food across more than 100 cities in Southeast Asia, and I think this has helped. This feature actually helps expand the reach for people across the region. And you can imagine, especially in Southeast Asia, there are more and more people having relationships, friends in this region, and that gives opportunity for me to, for example, order food for my friend, and perhaps even people in Jakarta having a meeting right now, and then the MSMEs in Jakarta would benefit, and so would a delivery partner, right, to fulfill this order. So it's really expanding this possibility. And I think what's helpful is because there is regional and in fact global recognition of this kind of services on digital platforms. So people find it quite easy to be able to access these services and therefore create this economic opportunity and transactions that in the past, this MSME may not have been known to anybody because they have a little store somewhere, right? But right now you can actually discover all of them on the platform. One thing I wanted to highlight as well is that, now that COVID has passed, I think there's an aspect of, helping them succeed online, but actually business success is not just going to be online. Digital can also be used to help them grow their business offline. And I think even like digital platforms like ourselves are also exploring other ways to use tech to support them. So, we're helping MSMEs and merchant partners with stronger offline and online integration. Things like, you can do self-pickup. People want to dine out. People want to have loyalty programs. These are things that we develop and tools so that, MSMEs can very easily also use these digital tools, digital reach to attract consumers in an offline basis as well. So I think when we talk about supporting merchants who are keen on overseas expansions, actually, because we do have information and insights on the food trends in different markets that we operate in, we actually are able to support these partners to tap on these food trends, connect them with our teams in the other markets who can support when they want to scale out their business in these other markets so that they can understand the food trends in perhaps, a Singapore merchant is interested to go to Bangkok and wants to find out, hey, how popular is this cuisine in this part of Bangkok, right? And then that can provide insights to inform them on the expansion as well. So I think there also are other ways we support merchant partners to grow. Things like, organizing merchant conferences so they can learn from successful merchants and industry leaders, upskilling them through different programs. We have a Grab Academy platform, which really is dedicated to offer curriculum and tools and learning resources so that they can learn on different skills to grow their business. And this is a continuous process. We continue to develop tools and opportunities. And as well as I think everybody knows that AI is something that's also very, very popular right now. And the question is, how can we continue to build tools so that MSMEs and more parts of the ecosystem who may not have resources to build their own can easily access these technological tools to grow their business. Yeah.
Thank you, Jamie. I think that's great. And can I make an order now so that you can get it delivered soon? I want some drinks and some food and all that for the tea break. So you can order from Singapore and get it delivered here in Jakarta. So thank you very much for the suggestions. And I think you did hit on a few very critical components here. When you have a platform that is evolving and developing and so on, there's going to be a need for skill sets and enabling people and so on. So maybe what I would like to do is to bring Gayatri Peria, who's the general manager for SUSE in ASEAN. And Gayatri, you are part of an organization that creates and enables developers to create software solutions and get it deployed in environments which make a difference. So from your perspective, how do you see SUSE as an organization, as a technology provider, in this case open source technology provider, help in building the capacity of the within the economy, and understanding also that there's a huge disparity in different geographies within ASEAN itself. So over to you, Gayatri, for your comments.
Thank you, everyone, and good morning, Harish, and to everyone in the room and in the forum. Thanks for the question. I think, Harish, in the new world, open source will be much more vital as a backbone for the economy to thrive, right? And I think that's got a lot to do with, the openness that we provide in helping organizations to experiment and adapt quickly. And we do it in a couple of ways, right? And I think SUSE has been a pretty renowned company for a while. It's a 33-year-old company. And we are pretty much sticking to our commitment of being an open source system and an open source innovator. The reason is because we are a big believer of, growing community. So if you were to look at our community today, we have about over 3,000 ecosystem partners cutting across multiple industry verticals globally. And at any one point in time, in any open source project, we have over 100,000 plus contributors, which means that this helps any organization who's trying to leverage newer technologies, whether they're trying to build it on house or whether they are trying to build it on the cloud, they have the ability of a community reach out and they can resolve issues today within minutes versus, waiting for response in a formalized manner when you run your technologies in the previous architectures, right? So that's one that's just a huge ability to scale pretty fast in alignment to what Sivaram said earlier about DEFA framework, right? If you want to move from 1 trillion to 2 trillion, you need to be a digitally enabled economy. And I think the core of that has many different elements, but a lot of us look at fintech today or agri-tech today, which is where Jamie was just saying a few minutes ago, how you could actually not have the talent or expertise and yet able to scale your products and solutions across Southeast Asia, right? So that's where I think that open source will be a really huge backbone to many enterprises, and also to really tighten the partnership and collaboration across Southeast Asia more seamlessly, where everything is online and digitally enabled. There is communication connectivities that's been built by SUSA that you could talk to any individual across the world at any point in time for scalability. These are, I think, some of the critical ions that open source brings to enterprises.
Thank you. Thank you, Gayatri. I think that you're speaking to a person who lives and breathes open source all the time. So that's wonderful to hear that. But what I'd like to do is to then perhaps pivot this a little bit to looking at how we are able to leverage some of these ideas that we've just brought forward into what, and I'm going to post this to Raymond Siva from MDEC, who is in Kuala Lumpur, I believe, right now. And from a perspective, because he has been having a significant amount of experience in World Economic Forum and so on, and places like that. So how would technology adoption, developer communities, platform solution providers, all of these things hook in together into creating opportunities for ASEAN? And given the experience that Raymond, you have spoken to and so on with the World Economic Forum, how can that be used to translate into the ASEAN Economic Forum as we are starting this journey forward? So Raymond, if you could just pick that question and take it from there. Raymond? Raymond Siva is the Senior Vice President, Digital Investment for the Malaysian Digital Economy Corporation, MDEC.
Hi, sorry, on behalf of Raymond, Zaid
Okay.
here, can give a few minutes for Raymond. He's currently with the minister right now.
Okay, no
Sorry.
worries. So, would you want to pick up the thing, or should I wait for Raymond to come online?
I think better wait for him because he's quite keen to join this.
Okay, all right,
Okay.
no worries. That's fine. That's
Sorry.
perfectly fine. What I will then do is, Hilmi already available? Okay. So what I'll do is, when Raymond is available, we will bring him on. So in the meantime, I think I would like to bring forward Hilmi Ardianto, who is the chairman of the Indonesian E-Commerce Association. Hilmi, thank you for being able to attend this time. Some of the comments that have been made during the previous speakers is that we need to have a platform, we need to have inclusivity, we need to find ways to do trading and selling and buying and financial inclusion, especially for the micro segment of the economy, people who are what is known as gig workers and so on. How do you think your organization is able to provide help in that space? Hilmi, over to you. Oh, Hilmi is also okay. All right. In that case, okay. So okay, looks like Hilmi is still delayed in getting to us. So what? Okay, then I'll pivot to another panelist. He's Hadri Sopri. He is the head of trade policy for APAC and Japan for AWS. Now, AWS, as we all know very well, is a platform provider. They have large footprint in Southeast Asia with data centers and so on. So, given the conversation we just had, in terms of enabling the developing communities, open source developers, people who are creating solutions for the Grab platform, for example, and any other type of platform solutions. How do you think, Hadri, that your organization and the services that you are providing can help drive the DEFA conversation forward to bring the current 1 trillion economy to a 2 trillion economy from a digital perspective? Your comments, please.
Yeah, thanks so much, Chris, for inviting me to speak today. I guess, at the outset, maybe I'll share a bit more about AWS, about us. We are a leading cloud service provider globally. And, in ASEAN, we are deeply invested, as you mentioned, and we are definitely here to stay. So just a bit of background, we started our first region, which is our flagship infrastructure investment of data centers in Asia Pacific in Singapore, actually. So in ASEAN in 2010. And this was the first ever region outside the US and Europe. And more recently in 2021, we launched a new region in Indonesia with a planned investment of 5 billion. And in 2023, we announced plans to launch new regions in Malaysia and also Thailand with an estimated investment of about 6 billion to 5 billion respectively. So overall, actually, in ASEAN, we have made a commitment of about 33 billion in investments. So I think that in and of itself is an investment into helping ASEAN reach that 2 trillion, right? Enabling, as a cloud service provider, we believe we are democratizing access to technologies, right? From data storage, data processing, to even AI, as you've mentioned earlier. But, our contribution spans beyond just infrastructure investments to also skilling and sustainability as well. On skilling, we've made a commitment to train 29 million people globally with free cloud computing skills training by 2025. And in Asia Pacific alone, we've trained about 7 million people since 2017. And this number is only growing. On AI specifically, we made an AI-ready commitment last year to train 2 million people in AI skills by 2025. So we believe that AI and machine learning are among the most transformational technologies of our time. And we believe through our local and custom programs, for example, AWS Laptop for Builders in Indonesia and AWS Restart, we are supporting some of the most talented and untapped future tech professionals in the region. In terms of, just, I guess, drawing back the conversation to DEFA and how, a company like us or, industry in general could contribute, I think capacity building is definitely part of that conversation. And, as a company and also through trade associations like the US ASEAN Business Council, I think we provided or we pledged to support capacity building in the DEFA negotiations. I was a former trade negotiator, right? So I think one of the gaps often in these kind of negotiations is that there's a knowledge gap where, there's a lack of understanding on what, on one hand, what a provision or trade commitment might actually mean on the one hand, and then on the other hand, also not being able to sort of recognize your interest, because often, you are not able to, whether, because of capacity or whether because there isn't that muscle built into governments in the region to consult industry and get, I guess, a good pulse on, what it is that the SMEs are looking for. What is it are the MNCs that invest in your country is looking for? So I think, through some of these capacity building activities that we are working on, we sort of try to unlock that, ensuring for us at least, we bring our customer voices as well to the fore. And, our customers range from, governments in the region who use the cloud to, multinational companies that are, born out like Grab, for example, and also small startups and things as well. So we bring some of these voices to the table as well for them to sort of be able to articulate what are their interests, how they see the ASEAN digital economy developing, and what they want to get out of an agreement like DEFA. So that's a part of it. I think something that we've always also pushed for in DEFA is, this idea around public-private partnership, right? So again, as a former trade negotiator, I was part of the group of Singapore negotiators that negotiated the earlier digital economy agreements, right? And part of the innovation in that is that it's not just trade rule, but it's also building platforms for private sector to come in for either for dialogues, regular dialogues with regulators, with governments to ensure that the agreement can be updated to take into account technological developments, or platforms for public-private partnerships to develop use cases. So you build trust in technologies. You build a platform where there could be even matching between businesses to for example in agri-tech or fintech, even like you come to this event where you see, hey, there's this particular technology or this is particular innovation that this company is providing that I hadn't thought about. So I think a platform or an agreement like DEFA could unlock things like that. And even on our end, just to speak about some of the stuff we've done, I think on AI, for example, one of the perennial issues around that is how do we make AI inclusive, right? And as part of that conversation, there's this whole discourse around large language models and how do you make that available beyond the English language. So even on that, for us, we had worked with AI Singapore to develop something called Sea Lion, which is Southeast Asia languages in one network. So it's a family of large language models, LLMs, and for background information, LLMs are what drives something like ChatGPT, for example. And these are specifically pre-trained and instruct-tuned for ASEAN languages and cultures. So these are also open source LLMs, and they are trained on 11 major regional languages like Bahasa Indonesia, Thai, Vietnamese, Tagalog, Burmese, Chinese, Malay, Tamil, and even Lao. So with something like this, we believe businesses in ASEAN can now build AI tools like chatbots, coding assistants, translators, and meeting summarizers. So this is just one example, I think, of something we've done, and certainly something that, if DEFA were to have that sort of platform, could be done not just for us, at least this was done in partnership with the Singapore agency, but across the region as well. So maybe I'll stop there.
Thank you, Hadri. Thank you for mentioning Sea Lion, because that's, I think it's a very important initiative on the part of AI Singapore. For those who don't know what that is, again, it's SEALION, which is Southeast Asian language. I forget the LION stands for. But the important thing there is you have a set of models that you can now use based on languages in the region, from the region, for the region. So that makes a lot of sense. And I think that one of the things to do a pitch for AI Singapore is to can have more contributors to that particular project, which I think is a good thing to have. Thank you very much, Hadri, for mentioning the AI inclusion part of the story. I think one of the biggest challenges, and we have to keep this in front and center all the time, digital is across the entire economy. I don't care which part of the industry, what type of industry you are digitally impacted, whether you like it or not. Given that as a state, and that's the state of the of how things are happening today. It's not going to happen; it is happening today. The next level there would be the notion, and as Hadri has brought up, and some of the other speakers also mentioned, AI solutions. Now, AI in itself is a big challenge because, again, this goes back to the analogy of the elephant. When you say AI, what are you talking about? Are you talking about the tail, the trunk, the foot, the body? What are you talking about? So AI is a huge beast in itself, no pun intended. But it is actually something that we have to constantly be aware of. So given that as a starting point, how do you think, especially those of you who are in the process of developing and deploying and providing to customers solutions based on AI for this region? So this is in a way it's an open-ended question. Is there anyone in our panelists who would like to take this up and see how we can what is it that we have from an insights perspective that you are able to contribute? Anybody talking specifically about AI solutions, and how do we enable the economy in ASEAN from a DEFA perspective, obviously, so that this does not at any time have a major impact on loss of jobs, because those are some of the concerns that have been raised so far. And anyone want to pick it up from here? Or maybe I can call out. Andy, do you think, can I, okay. Gayatri, would you like to comment on that?
All right. I mean, I probably have a very, very short snippet of this. I think the whole AI is, there's a big umbrella of cybersecurity that's integrated with that. Anything that we do, I think the far most critical thing that ASEAN should look at today would be the AI threat detection with a zero trust model. Because I think zero trust is something that, that's really crucial, that should be proactively embedded into any digital intention, not even an initiative. Once you have the intention, you should have a zero trust security architecture, proactive measurements being included, being tested before they progress the initiative. Because that basically the reason is today, I feel people need to be aware that ransomware is it's quiet, but it's not that it's not happening. There's many banks, many governments, many legislations do not have answers to that, and that itself in 2023 costed worldwide $20 billion. We are expecting this to go 5 times higher as the digital economy grows till 2030. So I guess some critical measures has to be taken when AI is adopted. So that will be my just take on this, Harish. Back to you.
Thank you, Gayatri. Andy, do you have something to add to that?
Yeah, I just want to give a quick, reflection based on what we do. So basically, when we talk about AI, there are many aspects about that. Besides, security, probably the first thing I can point out to is the value, added to creating benefits for even MSMEs. One of the examples I like to share today is, let's say, in the context of cross-border e-commerce, right? So AI also helps, improve certain operations of SME in general. For example, it can give personalized recommendations to micro sellers to overcome language and cultural barriers and managing complex logistics and shipping stuff, so on and so forth. It can also handle a lot of things, during the customer engagement journey from the beginning until the shipment is completed, and even at the customer relation stage. So that is actually coming from what we did with a lot of big companies. They wanted to introduce something helpful to enable MSMEs who are having limited capabilities, developing their own commercial capacity, right? Especially in context of e-commerce. And because I mentioned this example, I'd like to say something on top of that. I think eventually when we look back at the entire situation with a bird's eye view, I think given the increasing dominance of e-commerce, digital platform, digital marketing, and so on, I think there is somehow, my view is that there is somehow a polarization in terms of business players. On one hand, we have seen still traditional MSMEs are still very important. And on the other hand, we also have a different category of SME, but they are more technology driven. They are innovative startups, right? Although they are small, but I think they are different type of small. Even we call them as MSMEs. So for traditional SMEs, I think it's better for them to focus on the core product to offer or to enhance their value proposition. Because if they cannot strengthen the unique selling points, probably the other people will do much better, and the other commercial aspects will be offered by e-commerce platforms. And but at the same time, it's better for them to think about digital adoption, because while the core products, while core product developments, remain central, but the adoption of digital tools and technologies like AI and chip to enhance efficiency and enhance the reach of customer is also fundamental to that. But on the other hand, we think innovative value addition startups, especially people with tech-enabled services, could also leverage technology to bridge the gaps between the traditional SMEs and the giant platforms. Because I think that there are a lot of gaps out there. Although a lot of giant companies they have big platforms, I don't think they can solve completely the commercial pain points faced by the traditional small and micro businesses. That is just my quick reflection, Harris.
Thank you. Thank you, Andy. I think you did bring up some critical components from a gap perspective. And also earlier, Gayatri talked about zero trust for services that you want to provide online. So that does bring up the question about cybersecurity and AI-related threats to cybersecurity. So if Sivaram, can I ask you questions around the issues about how DEFA and the work that you are also doing from a cybersecurity perspective for ASEAN? Is there something that you can share on how do we handle the threat? Because we don't want to be in a situation where, like what we saw a few weeks ago, where one update of one system caused 8 million systems to go down. It was not a cyber security issue per se, but it highlighted the high dependency on all of these technologies that we use. So what do you see from a DEFA perspective? How do we inoculate our systems in this region to be able to handle threats, especially cybersecurity threats generated by AI solutions? Over to you, Siva, for your comments.
Thank you, Harish. I think when it comes to AI, it's a very interesting topic. Everyone wants to chip in. Right? Now, if you look at AI, you can look into two main perspectives. Number one, AI in terms of the growth perspective. I think there's a lot of study that's been in place. For example, Microsoft has mentioned that AI alone can help to grow the economy and can contribute to the ASEAN economy to $1 trillion USD. Right? But the other aspect that we cannot neglect is from the ethical perspective. Right? So this is where I think Gayatri touched upon. So when you talk about ethical, there are two parts of it. So when it comes to AI, there are two main concerns that globally and even in ASEAN we have. Number one is the trust and security, which I think Gayatri mentioned. And number two is biasness. Let me just give an example. Last year I was in Singapore in one of the cybersecurity defense ministry, where you see all the top guys, the corporals, all the generals from the land, sea, and air was there. And in the opening ceremony, there was someone who was not on the stage, but making an announcement, welcoming all the participants and everything. And then the person invited the chair to come and give a speech. The top guy came to the stage and said, "Can I know the one who gave the opening remark? Was it an AI or was it a human being?" See, I think that itself is a trust issue, right? And that top general mentioned, if it is a human being, can you come to the stage? And I just want to make sure that it's not an AI. So biasness, an example, without prejudice, right? If you look at ChatGPT, Right? When you Google something on ChatGPT or when you look into ChatGPT, you wouldn't know the answers you get from ChatGPT is on a specific region. Is it inclusive? Does it also include regions like ASEAN or Asia, or does it focus very much in the US, Europe, and so on? So the biggest issue that we are dealing for ASEAN, especially on DEFA, more towards the ethical part of it. Regardless, the private sector are open for them to go and explore AI, make sure that it is help the industry, that is the sectors. But there are certain elements that you need to follow whereby it has to be a human-centric AI development. What does that mean? While AI can help a lot of sectors, for example, in education and healthcare, an example, there are many diseases where you cannot find solutions. AI can help in running the processes, coming up with a solution, right? The process can be done, the solution can be done by AI, but the decision making need to come from human beings. I think that's where the ethical part of comes in. Now, when it comes to cybersecurity, I think this is one of the bigger concerns that I think the IT also mentioned, of course, some misinformation and a few other things, right? Now, you'll be surprised that many ASEAN countries, they don't even have a cyber law or cyber security policy. Right? I think this is the fundamental, as we evolve, technology evolves, especially technology like AI evolves very fast. Last year, I remember I was Googling, thinking about, last year, January, I was reading what is ChatGPT. Now, you can't live without ChatGPT. I mean, it's part of your life already, right? So AI evolves very fast and technology evolves very fast. So does cybersecurity. So in DEFA, there are two elements that we are looking at. Number one is countries need to have law and regulation and policies with regards to cybersecurity. I think that is fundamental. That's a basic that you need to have. Number two, when you talk about cybersecurity, it's not a competition, but it's a complement. Why? I believe that Harish or Sachin mentioned in the beginning that we are all interconnected. The only way that we are interconnected is through digital, right? The more we are interconnected, we are vulnerable to cybersecurity attacks. I mean, one attack in Malaysia, for example, it can easily spread to Vietnam because we are all, or Singapore or Thailand, because we are all interconnected. So it's not a competition, but it's more towards collaboration that we need. So in DEFA, we talk about cooperation, whereby we have established the ASEAN third competitive emergency response team, which we serve two purposes. Number one, when an incident happens, all 10 countries need to come together as a team and ensure that we recover from the incident. I think that is the reactive measure. But what is more important is on the proactive measure, whereby Singapore might be a bit more advanced when it comes to cybersecurity compared to other countries, right? So the cooperation is very important, right? Not only within the ASEAN, we also need to cooperate with the developed nation such as the EU, the US, the UK, who is much more advanced when it comes to cybersecurity, right? So we need to learn from each other. We need to come up with policies by learning from each other so that we are all on par when it comes to cybersecurity attacks or cybersecurity vulnerabilities. Yeah. So these are the two areas that we are looking at in DEFA: cooperation, as well as ensuring there are sufficient law or regulation in place when it comes to cybersecurity. Thank you, Harish.
Thank you for that, Sivaram. Just to so that those who are watching this in a few years from now, you know what ASEAN CERT is, CERT, which is Computer Emergency Response Team. This is a typical response. They are people who understand how to help organizations to respond to cybersecurity threats and mitigate that, and hopefully to negate it as well. So certs are an important aspect of all internet-related activities around the world, and so every country has their own cert as well. So it's great to see ASEAN having an ASEAN cert, and more power to them to make sure that we keep our systems operational and fully functional. I would like to now then maybe turn to Hilmi. Hilmi, sorry we couldn't get you earlier, but right now you are here and you're online. So thank you very much for being able to make it. We talked in the session, in the last hour or so, talking about how do we enable what are the challenges in enabling the micro and small medium enterprises. And because you're the chair of the Indonesian E-commerce Association, what have you seen from your perspective in the last, from a pre-COVID, post-COVID era, and how do we enable and empower the micro a part of the economy, the gig economy, as it were, and how does your members of your association help move the needle forward in terms of digital inclusion and financial equity and inclusion as well? So over to you, Hilmi.
Thank you, Harris. Sorry for joining in late.
Go ahead.
Okay. So basically, the digitalization of MSMEs in Indonesia has been the main priority since the COVID-19 pandemic, and the government basically has some kind of target to reach 30 million MSMEs to onboard in all e-commerce platforms in Indonesia. Where now the position is up to this August, we have reached 27 million MSMEs that successfully onboarded. However, while we can see the positive impact from the onboarding MSMEs to the platforms, we can see that from the report of MSME Ministry that they found around 70.2% MSMEs still facing obstacles to penetrate into the digital ecosystem, which I can see it in three main factors. The first one is more on the lack of digital literacy and skills. Many MSMEs still reluctant to join online, while even though they can see the positive impact, they still feel that online platform is complicated one, and then a lot of fraud that happens as well. Therefore, IDEA play a pivotal role in socializing about the importance and how to use the e-commerce platform in a correct way. We also see that this lacking of digital literacy and skills, that some of them are actually on board in our platforms, but because they cannot utilize the features of the platforms or promote their product in optimum way, it's resulting in inactive online stores that nowadays is quite many in several e-commerce platforms. The second one, you can see that because the MSME is still having a lack of financial access, even the Central Bank of Indonesia also stated that MSMEs are still 20 or 21% bank credits are actually disbursed to MSMEs. This has made it quite difficult from them to access the capital to develop their business. Therefore, having one bank account nowadays is the basic requirement for sellers in these platforms that we push through our facilitation in many occasions, especially during the Bangga Buatan Indonesia campaigns. And the third one is more on the legality and product certifications, that most MSMEs is basically home-based. Therefore, they have difficulty to meet the standard that have been made by Indonesian government, and moreover, they're still having like a lacking of legal status because they're lacking of knowledge about it, and they're also concerned about being taxed. Yeah, maybe that's what I can see from the challenges in MSME nowadays.
Okay, thank you, Hilmi. I think that is a very interesting comment that you made when you have people who are home-based businesses having challenges in doing the the e-commerce component. Is it a challenge because they have I'm making an assumption here that they do have connectivity to the internet maybe through their mobile phone as a minimum. Now, is it because they are having challenges in the actual connectivity itself that is therefore causing this lack of usage in that place? Is it because connectivity issues because they're too far away from the nearest cell tower or something like that? Is that a contributing factor, which means the problem is lying elsewhere in terms of the infrastructure that needs to be put in place? Do you have a comment on that? Is it an infrastructure problem or is it just...
Yes.
Okay.
Infrastructure problem has also become one of the main factors because in Indonesia, it's mostly the connectivity only happens in several big cities. Meanwhile, from other, tier 2 or maybe type 3 cities, it's not really good in terms of connection. So, that becomes the main factor. That's why the penetration of e-commerce in Indonesia basically only happen in several big cities, mostly in Jakarta. And the homework is now to create some equality for in terms of connectivity for all Indonesian citizens.
Okay, thank you. That's excellent. Now, let me then move a little bit to the issue of standards. As you would know that I am the deputy chair of the IT Standards Committee in Singapore, and many of the standards that we look at are, primarily for IT-related components, but some of them naturally will overlap with other areas in banking and so on. So there is this proposed standard called the Unique Business Identification Numbers, UBIN. Across ASEAN to streamline businesses and operations using a single identifier. Those of you in Singapore, we are familiar with something called UEN, Unique Enterprise Number or something like that. But the point I would like to make here is that when you have a unique way to identify the 7 million customers or 7 million businesses in this region, how does that help from a platform perspective? So can I maybe go to Jamie? Does that help you, Jamie, from your organization's perspective to be able to utilize, if you have a unique identifier for all the businesses in this part of the world, in ASEAN itself, how would that help your business to move forward? Go ahead.
So I think when there's sort of an alignment on an identifier like this, I think it would help probably the MSMEs when they want to expand to have a familiar kind of like identifier where hopefully because it's now recognized across the different markets, it's going to be a lot easier for them. Versus you may have to register for a lot of different identifiers. I think that's going to be harder. I think in general, when we talk about like having a common identifier, especially if it's something that's easy to access and verify, then it can benefit merchants and also platforms in being able to streamline their KYB processes. And that could make it easier and ultimately just more efficient in that sense. Then as a platform that operates across the region, then there's a bit more certainty and ability to scale perhaps a certain process to be done in a certain way because there's a standard that you can recognize in a common way.
Okay, thank you, Jamie. I think that's good to know as well. I think the evolving trust is a very important thing, and also ethical usage of the solutions that is being made available. And as Sivaram was mentioning, ethics from an AI perspective, ethics from a business perspective is also very critical, right? So it all fits together. Now, let me then pivot a little bit to looking at standards as well, and specifically around AI-related components. So there is, those of you who are familiar with how standards are developed, there is a global organization called ISO, International Standards Organization. There is a standard called ISO 42001, which essentially deals all things around AI management and so on. So the question I want to pose to all of you is, when you are looking at developing and deploying digital solutions across your businesses, how much of the impact of AI, again, going back to a little bit on AI, compliance with the standards, not legal compliance, because legal compliance have to have laws and so on behind it. But this is actually a process and a procedural kind of compliance to standards. I'm just curious as to if there's anyone in my panelists here who have actually experienced or done work around ISO 42000 series of standards for AI governance and also for usage. Any comments from anyone first? Perhaps, okay, if there's no one who has actually experienced that, I think that's perfectly fine because it is relatively new. But what I wanted to highlight to the audience is also that there are existing work that is ongoing globally from a standards perspective for AI that is not regulatory. Because one of the challenges that I think as a cohesive unit that we want to look at is not everything has to be regulated, that not everything that needs to be regulated should be regulated. It should be as much as possible adopted from best industry practices as well as what is standards systems provide. So maybe, okay, Sivaram, you are on it, and if you want to add anything to that, that'll be more than welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Arish. I think before I go into standards, just want to comment on something on the unique identification number that you mentioned. Okay. Now, having unique identification, or we call it a digital ID as a general term, is important. But what is important for ASEAN is ensuring the digital ID is interoperable. What does interoperable means? That means I, as a Malaysian, I have my own identity card, which has a number, right? Now, this identity card number is not recognizable in Singapore or even in Thailand, Bangkok. But digital ID will make sure, interoperable digital ID will ensure that my ID now is being recognized in Singapore, Thailand, any part of the ASEAN countries. So what does that lead to? Right? I think Ashish mentioned about bankability. I think he mentioned something like 40% of people are not bankable, and then the cost of bankability is very low.
Oops, you're muted.
Sorry?
You're muted. Okay.
Oh, yeah. Oh, okay, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So
go ahead.
I was referring to Ashish was mentioning about bankability, whereby 40% of population is not bankable, and then to get had the hassle of having an account and so forth. When you talk about cross-border data or cross-border trade, right? An interoperable digital ID is really important because it will expedite the process of MSMEs as well as individuals to get government grants or even banking loan in other countries, right? One of the biggest challenge when we did the DEFA study, we got to know that in terms of cross-business verification or cross-business identification. So if I'm a Malaysian, I want to set up a business in Singapore. The process of identifying, the process of setting up the company is very tedious, long process, and very costly as well. Why? Because I need to submit a list of documents, must make sure that I'm legit I'm legit, and then they have to do a verification. If you have an interoperable, a digital ID, the process is very seamless, right? It'd be easier, it'd be faster for us to do business across ASEAN countries. So that's number one, my intervention on digital ID, interoperable digital ID. Now, when it comes to standards, for ASEAN on DEFA, we focus a lot on standards, but we do not specify specific standards. But any solution, which IT solution, it has to adopt international standard. For example, in banking system, we have the standard called ISO 20022, if I'm not mistaken. So in DEFA, we do not specifically mention the standard name, but it's a rule and principle that we mentioned that they need to adopt an international standards, which is internationally recognized, so that that particular IT system or banking system or a digital ID or digital trade is allowed is to expand to be an interoperable system. Yeah. Now, quickly, I think I want to just comment on Gayatri's this one about open source, right? In DEFA also, we also put a rule or a principle that any system that has been developed, it has to be developed in open standard or open platform where it's a public utility. Why we do that? Because we do not want the system to be always innovation. The system is always growing, is evolving, and so on. So when you build in an open standards, right, open platform, right, that allows R&D, innovation, scalability, and so forth. Yeah. So this is just a quick comment from DEFA point of view. Thank you.
Thank you, Sivaram. Hadri, you got... Oh, sorry. Sure. Okay, we have a question here from Ashish. Hang on a second. Go ahead, Ashish.
Shiva, thank you for touching on the UBIN and also the cost of implementing bank accounts. With UBIN, we all understand that it'll provide trust and transparency across border, and it'll simplify things from the perspective of both regulatory and operational side of opening accounts and transacting with them. Now, I have a question on capacity building, and this is to Hilmi, Hadri, and Jamie, all three of you put together, because some of the numbers. Hello. Sorry. So I'm posing a question here on capacity building to Hilmi, Hadri, and Jamie, all three of you. Hilmi, you mentioned that there are 27 million MSMEs that have been onboarded in Indonesia, and the target is about 30 million. Hadri, AWS also, being a leading infrastructure provider in the region, you also have access to a very large number of MSMEs in the region. And Jamie, you mentioned that Grab has about 7 million regular users and about 100,000 MSMEs. Now, if we take into account the access levels that you have between all the organizations, how can we use this access to do capacity building from a digital and financial inclusion perspective? I mean, see, we work in silos, but if we were to come together as organizations, each one bringing in their capacity, how can we all work together to extend this number of 27 million to 30 million to maybe 200 million, as organizations coming together? What are your perspectives of the areas that we can come together and work on a financial inclusion plan together? I mean, that's a question that I'm posing to you. Also, extending this from MSMEs to also the agricultural sector, to the farmers. So it's an open question. Please feel free to answer. Any one of you can choose to answer. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks. Thanks for the question, and also thanks, Harish, for the earlier question. I actually wanted to comment on the whole ISO standards and the ISO 4201, which, I mean, just, I guess, start on that question. I think we definitely support that. So we were actually part of, the broad international community of experts, subject matter experts on AI, that collaborated to bring this standard into fruition, right? And, laying the foundation to the final publication eventually, I think last year. So we are definitely, we believe trust in AI is crucial, and standards such as 4201 is one way to demonstrate and earn the public trust by supporting or demonstrating an approach to responsible AI. And even for us, we are continuing to pursue the adoption of that, and we look forward to working with customers to do the same. So, just, I guess, at a higher level, I think international standards are something that we definitely support and something that we advocate for in the context of DEFA as well. Standards, in adopting and pursuing international standards opens up markets, right, for smaller companies to adhere to one standard that is then interoperable in multiple markets. So to that end, we certainly support DEFA in sort of adopting commitments or provisions that promote international standards and further help ASEAN countries adopt such standards, or at least base their own domestic standards on. So that's on the standards piece. I think on capacity building, we are very ready, I think, to work to figure out, I guess, what the digital inclusion, digital inclusion in DEFA would look like, right? So for us, we do provide skills training already in the region. We do provide, credits for startups to get onboarded on AWS. We do have programs that enable, small businesses and the likes to come on AWS and, go on the cloud and innovate. So I think that's definitely a role that we can play here. I think even on the financial inclusion part of it, this is on the other side of our house, which is on Amazon payments. So that's not on AWS. But I think there's definitely synergies that we can bring to bear in terms of, working together with, stakeholders in the region, local payment providers, for example, to figure out how do we build this financial inclusion in the region. We are, like I said, we are deeply invested in the region. We want to see a growing digital economy. Our investments will only, grow as the region grows as well. So that's something we are keen to do. We are already part of, this, I guess, a key industry stakeholder in supporting DEFA, and, happy to explore ways to do even more.
Thank you, Hadri. Is there anyone else to respond to Ashish's challenge?
Yeah, I can just chime in a little bit. Well, I think thank you for calling this out, and I think agree with Hadri as well about how platforms can play an important role in supporting building as well. I think I briefly touched on earlier that at Grab we actually have this platform called Grab Academy, which is where the merchants that are registered on our platform can access resources and tools to learn and upskill themselves in relevant topics to grow their business. And I think it's with platforms like this where we can do our part to help reach merchants on our ecosystem as well. So I'm actually very happy to collaborate with DEFA or any other providers, especially when we find there's useful content, relevant content that you're trying to push to merchant partners. I would say that I think from a practicality perspective, it's really how do we tailor the materials and have the right settings to make it compatible with what merchants are able to consume. For example, if they're going to be very busy running their business as well, what is the value proposition you're going to give to them for them to take time off to sort of consume this material or to attend a kind of course? Because I think this is also the kind of mindset we have where we try our best to be able to, when you can't force someone to consume content or learn something. You must always help them see that, hey, there's a value proposition for why you're trying to teach someone something, why you're trying to get someone to digitalize. And I think this general principle, if we put that thinking hat on, it can help us ensure that the target audience we're trying to reach and equip them on a certain topic, they see the value of how it translates to supporting their goals. For example, for MSMEs, it will be to build their business, or for example. So I think it's always really tying back to what they care about, so that they will have that interest and ability to participate in a suitable way. Yeah.
Thank you, Jamie. I think that is interesting because I'm just also wondering, Jamie, between your organization and Hilmi's the e-commerce association in Indonesia, I'm hoping that you guys have some form of a collaboration, especially when you want to educate people and teach people how to use some of the tools. Your academy may be a useful tool to be used by the members of the Indonesian e-commerce association, assuming you have material that is available in Bahasa as well, I guess. So I'm not putting you on the spot, but I'm just suggesting there's one area of collaboration between the two organizations. Any other comments? Yes, please.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay, thank you for calling out the questions about the MSME capacity building. I think what we can do is in each association we have some kind of like actions that we do, but nowadays we just do it like solely, and then more collaborative action is needed because in each association we also can see what kind of programs or initiatives that works well with each of our members. as well as with the government itself. Like in Indonesia, we also create a campaign called Bangga Buatan Indonesia, or Proud of Made Indonesian Product, where we try to push that kind of campaigns in every platform members in IDEA, including Grab, and we try to embrace all onboarding systems like the academy, or maybe like the curriculum that each platform made, and then we try to give the opportunity for all MSMEs to join to every single platform that they prefer. And we try to create a collaborative campaign that we can find what kind of goals that we want to achieve. Like in Proud of Made Indonesian Products, we want to achieve 30 million, 27 million. I think this kind of collaborative action can be done because in each situation from each country, like in Malaysia or maybe in Indonesia, in Thailand, and so on, we try to we can find which middle ground that we can meet, and it can give a better inspiration, better insight for DEFA development as well.
All right. Thank you, Helmi. So I see that Raymond Siva has been able to join us now. So I think, Raymond, I'm not sure whether you had the opportunity to listen in the previous conversations. Since you have experience with the World Economic Forum, so maybe my question to you would be centered around your experience in WEF and how the challenges that they may have faced, and what are the lessons that we in AEF, the ASEAN Economic Forum, can benefit from, and then capitalize on it, and then take to the next level. Or something that, because of your background in the Malaysian Digital Economy Corporation, MDEC, you may have a perspective of how organizations like AEF can bring the inclusiveness and the capacity building for ASEAN based on MDEC's perspective, as well as your own experience from a global perspective. So over to you from a capacity building point of view. So Raymond, over to you. Thank you for joining us.
Harish, thank you. I apologize for my tardiness, being caught up with another event as well. But getting right into it, Harish, I think, firstly, I want to say that Malaysia embarked on our digital transformation journey in 1996. It's an initiative called the Multimedia Super Corridor that the government launched back then, right? And that literally was a physical corridor where the Twin Towers in Malaysia currently is, right up to Putrajaya, which is the administrative capital for the government, right? And there was a concerted effort into bringing foreign technology, foreign companies into Malaysia via a basket of, buttons, that we had to press. And that included incentives, tax incentives, non-tax incentives, rental, talent building, and all the others that was put in place. A very innovative program, right? There was zero contribution to the economy or to the GDP back then. Now we are targeting the digital economy to contribute 25.5% to the GDP by 2025. That's a huge jump, right? And so how do we do that? It was a lot of initial stage government policies, government-driven initiatives together with the industry, right? So there was a lot of work done with Microsoft, for example, SAP, Oracle, and all those big guys to say what is required to fast-track digital transformation, right? Back then, how do we get into being a ICT society from a very commodity-driven, manufacturing-driven economy, right? So now, fast forward 28 years later, we're in a good state, right? Our connectivity on 4G is ubiquitous. We're almost 100% already. 5G connectivity is at 80% of more than 80% of populated areas. So digital infrastructure was very important, both on the physical standpoint as well as the connectivity standpoint. I have to say that we are also looking at legislating perhaps, or thinking about legislating connectivity and access as a basic human right. Yeah, and that will then catalyze, developers and other players in the digital industry to really take this seriously, right? These are just some of the ideas that we have around digital infrastructure. Now, MDEC, the Malaysia Digital Economy Corporation, has been the sole digital economy promotion, investment and also promotion agency since 1996, right? So right now, we report to the Ministry of Digital that was created in December of last year. We, in Malaysia, Ministry of Digital is, again, an innovative step forward. We're the first Ministry of Digital in ASEAN, and that tells you how important the digital economy is to the country. Minister Gobind Singh is now leading the charge forward. Yeah. Now, having a good infrastructure in place, having the data centers, submarine cables, and all of that in place, is not good enough if we don't protect or have enough resilience around the digital infrastructure. So we're looking at, for example, we launched the Cybersecurity Act 3 months ago, amendments to the Personal Data Protection Act. We've got the Data Governance Act being planned for the year end. So we need this also to come across very strongly to say that Malaysia, not only are we looking at the digital infrastructure, make sure it's robust, resilient, we also have the acts in place, the necessary cybersecurity laws in place, personal data protection in place to ensure that we are able to deliver impact on the economy. And then finally, is talent, right? Pillar 1, Pillar 2 means nothing if we don't have our talent in this space. So efforts are being put to upskill Malaysians. We actually got a very robust talent workforce, but like all the conversations before me, AI is going to be is already a game changer. What's happening around the cybersecurity or digital trust side of things is also really very important. We need to upskill not only our talents, but also the companies to understand what they need to do in this space, right? So infra, cybersecurity, talent are the key things that we're looking at. And the final one to all of that then is adoption. Now, EY report has clearly showed that if the MSMEs and SMEs adopt digital adoption, 30% of our 1.2 million SMEs go into digital adoption. It may give a 1% boost to GDP, right? So we'll have to really think about how do we want to ramp that up. On the baseline is to get the SMEs into cashless platforms, right? That's on the baseline. We're also looking that to be tagged on to a digital ID, whether it's a business digital ID or the citizens digital ID. I think those two parts are linked together inextricably. And I want to make reference to how India has rolled out its Aadhaar tech stack, right? Where you have, the unified payment systems, UPI, sitting above the foundation of the digital ID that they built. And really that has catalyzed a lot more innovations, access to digital, access to funding, micro loans, and so on and so forth, right? So we'll have to think about digital adoption on that basis. Digital ID for business, digital ID for rakyat, have cashless, and from there, fintech, and all of that will come up from it. Okay. My experience with the World Economic Forum via MDEC has been very interesting. Now, the World Economic Forum, and I believe the ASEAN Economic Forum, has the power of convening, right? And I think that's really important. Working in our silos, we're very busy looking at our own economy and our 14 states. But events such as this or summits like what Davos has brought together really allows us to look at best practices, build the bridges, and talk about what is important, right? Like AI safety. AI can empower good, AI can also empower bad, right? That's at the base level. So forums such as this then allow us to learn from each other and really meaningfully connect, right? And the programs run by GIZ as well as ASEAN Economic Forum now takes on a more important plant for Malaysia as we assume the chair of ASEAN next year, right? So a lot of thinking around what do we do, how do we work with our ASEAN members on key things, like I said, around digital infrastructure, cross-border data flows, e-invoicing, how can we build up resilience around cybersecurity, AI safety, talent mobility, and finally adoption. right? Where businesses can do business quite freely in the ASEAN market via instruments such as the DEFA.
Thank you, Raymond. Thank you for your contributions. I think that's useful. Maybe let me ask one very straightforward question. Hopefully, it will be easy for you to take it up as well. A question of digital and financial inclusion, from your perspective or MDEC's perspective, what are you looking at trying to do? The PPP programs and so on. So, is there any comments you have on that?
Yeah. So we have an organization called PayNet, which is a consortium of banks led by the central bank that is looking at financial inclusion for the MSMEs and SMEs, right? So again, I say on the base level will be things like mobile payments, QR codes, and so on and so forth, that will have to make sure that our MSMEs adopt on the baseline. We have a very, very robust e-commerce industry, right, that has driven the growth of the digital economy, right? And we believe that e-commerce is really the easiest way for MSMEs and SMEs to get into a larger market. So a lot of effort has been put, especially over the last 4 years, working with partners like Lazada, Shopee, Alibaba, and the rest, to ensure that there are enough of support given to these MSMEs and SMEs to gain access to a larger market. And this will require fintech solutions. This will require secure payment gateways and the rest, right? The worry there, I think, with the SMEs and MSMEs is the security of those transactions, number one, and also the end-to-end, especially if you're looking at supply chains for MSMEs, you're usually paying cash, right? And the thinking is that if I do this, my suppliers then are expecting cash. So we will have to look at the supply chain to ensure everything is digitalized, end-to-end. And that will take a little bit more time, I believe, with carrot and stick approach, right? What is the stick here? E-invoicing. So Malaysia has already said that by this year and next year, e-invoicing will come into play for MSMEs, starting on the higher end, right up to the 50 million and below, right? And that, for us, will be the push for companies, SMEs, to get onto digital platforms with the adoption of e-invoicing and also ESG. These are the two prong pillars that we'll be looking at the SMEs. Fintech solutions via startups, like I said just now, around mobile payments, and the rest are ramping up, and that's what we're doing to push adoption of fintech and inclusion.
Thank you, Raymond. I think that's very good background information as well. And I know there was an intervention that was being asked for from Sita. So Sita, over to you.
It's a bit of a hard act to follow since it was very comprehensive what Raymond just conveyed, but I wanted to circle back a little bit to the digital skills development. How do we build the digital skill and the digital will that is needed to embrace the digital economy and digital trade here in ASEAN? And I liked very much what was said earlier by some of the colleagues talking from a platform perspective, how the platforms like AWS or Grab are democratizing access not only to their own offers, to their own platforms, but also to knowledge, to deliver trainings and capacity building activities to the people in ASEAN, the MSMEs, but also the young. This is also, we need to be aware, it's a very young region, so there's a lot of potential as well to start them young and to look at the more than 30% of ASEAN population that are actually between 15 and 34 years old. And besides the public and private partnership, also look into how can educational institutions be brought in. So digital skills are embedded there as well. I'm in fact working on behalf of GIZ in a project that is engaged in university cooperation to introduce so-called micro-credentials on digital skills, on AI, on data, on digital entrepreneurship. We want to make sure that there are ways to also verify that those that have been trained or that have participated in short-term courses related to digitalization have the credentials that they can show for so that they are employable as well to the private sector. And so we can nurture innovation, we can nurture the SME community in the region even more through those young people that go through the system and embrace those or participate in those courses. We also want to, of course, you spoke earlier about talent mobility. It's not just the talent for the private sector. Some of those IT incidents you hinted at are actually because we have a lack of talent in the government. And so our project, again, back to the micro-credentials on digital skills development, is also catering to career pathways that are not just outlined for the private sector, but also how can we build those skills within the government and those that are becoming public policy professionals, etc., working in different ministries that are then responsible for devising, developing, and implementing agreements and actions like the Digital Economy Framework Agreement. So a holistic approach that brings together the public and the private sector and civil society or academic institutions as actors, but also as those that actually benefit from or learn from each other, I think is very important when we're looking at building, again, the digital skill and the digital will here in the region. I just wanted to bring that in because right now we have nobody, I think, here in our discussion who is representing the educational sector, but should not be lost sight of because that's where the young are, that's where we can start them young, where we can build those skills already from a very young or from a relatively young age.
Thank you, Sita. I think that is, it always reminds me that, we can talk about all the technology, we can talk about all the policies and every single bit, but when we have nobody who can actually do things with it, we lost the game. So you need to be able to enable people because at the end of the day, it's all about people. People-centered development is what is needed, critical across all industries, across all nations, actually across all time. If we miss that piece, that we don't train people up, then we have lost the plot. So capacity building is a very critical thing. Let me just ask a very simple question here. Is there any questions coming up from online viewers? Anybody? Any questions from them? Any online questions? If you look, you can look it up while I'll just post something back to the panelists. As we are beginning to wrap up, I just wanted to probably ask each one of you if there is something that you would like to see happen from this outcome from this particular conversation we just had for the last hour or so. What would you like to see that we can review one item per person in the next 9 to 12 months that we would like to come and see make happen? I give you some time to think about it while we check online if there's any questions. Any questions online? No questions online. So so that makes it easy. So maybe what I'll do is I'll just go around the table based on the list of names I have listed right in front of me. I'll start with Sivaram. Is there something that you like to see? Again, let me rephrase what I would just say. Is there something like you want to see happen within the next 9 to 12 months that was kind of an outcome from this conversation we just had? So highlight something that you think would be, it may not be doable immediately, it may take some challenges, but I think there's something that we need to put it out there so that we have something to hook on to look at 9 months, 12 months from now. So Sivaram, over to you.
Thank you, Harish. I think some of the key areas in terms of DEFA negotiation, I think we do have some challenges, some sensitive topics. For example, data localization. I think this is something that everyone is talking about it. It's very beneficial to the industries, companies, right? But then there is some issues or understanding the ASEAN member state understanding the importance of having data localization, right? So that's one area that you can look at. The other area is in terms of e-commerce. When it comes to cross-border e-commerce, maybe you can look into how does custom duties, under the WTO JSI, it was discussed that custom duties should not be one of the areas that we need to look into when it comes to e-commerce products. And also when it comes to e-commerce product, like what Raymond has mentioned, e-commerce is booming, especially in ASEAN. It's huge. That's contributing a lot to the digital economy, right? How do we not go into a non-discriminatory product treatment when it comes to e-commerce? So probably you can look into these 3 areas that would be helpful for DEFA negotiation. Yep, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Sivaram. That was excellent. A good point about the cross-border issues in terms of customs and taxes. Hilmi, something from you. Hopefully you're still on. If you are not on, I think I'll just go to the next one. Andy, something from you. Andy? All right, not seeing you coming on yet. So let me then move on to the next person who is online. It'll be Gayatri. The one thing that you like to see within the next... Okay, Andy, you're there. Okay. Andy, go ahead. Go ahead,
Yeah,
Andy.
I was talking my image of a collaboration and discussion towards improvement about a digitally interoperable a platform for either business register or a finance, and such a design, fundamental design would be, I think, top down enough to engage the involvement of payment intermediaries and governmental agencies, as well as the private sector SMEs. So that's something I think that requires the private sector.
Thank you, Andy. I think the interoperability of finance transactions it's critically important, and I think that has been highlighted by many speakers as well. So thank you, Andy. We try and see whether in 9 months' time when we revisit this, whether it has progressed at all. So Hilmi, I think you're on. Go ahead.
From my perspective, I think what we need to emphasize more on the how we can create some kind of collaborative action in terms of creating a capacity building, as well as how we can develop some kind of some kind of standards in terms of product, or maybe an IT standards that we can agree together between each country, so we can have a better movement. We can move the needle to the DEFA development.
Thank you, Andy. Sorry, Hilmi. Can I go to Gayatri, please? The one thing that you like to see within the next 9 to 12 months. Go ahead.
Thank you. I guess, coming more from my technology lens of view, I think all 14 countries, we all have some great initiatives and, great councils and great bodies coming together to digitize. I guess it would be great to have one common community portal, right, where, any one of the country's representatives divided by verticals or industry verticals or by subject matters that can be reached out easily would be great. So to have a community engagement initiative.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. I think Ashish is taking a lot of notes on that one, so that's good. So Jamie, over to you.
I suppose I was sharing with you yesterday when we were chatting that I think it's quite important for, when we want to harness the benefits of tech, to have tech innovation, business model innovation, as well as policy innovation. I think it could be interesting for us to just maybe have a bit of collection and learnings, maybe of some examples where, where these three may not have lined up. If there are areas where we see opportunities where there is tech innovation, where there is some business model innovation, and whether or not there's sufficient space where there was sufficient policy innovation that helps make this golden triangle for this to be fully harnessed. And if not, then at least it helps us diagnose where the struggles are. It could be business model innovation, or it could be also in the policy innovation.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for reminding me that, because I think we discussed it yesterday, and I was suggesting that this is a three-piece jigsaw puzzle. So
Yeah,
we must
exactly.
fit the three pieces of which is business, technology, and policy, have to fit together sufficiently well. And if they don't fit, it's a mismatch. We have a huge problem. We have gaps. So thank you very much for bringing that up and reminding me on that. Raymond, can I have your one thing that you like to see happen within the next 9 to 12 months?
Okay, just one.
Just one.
I think just one. We're probably, or Malaysia is at least looking at something we call the digital trust initiative, right? And in the digital economy, trust is going to be key, especially with deep fakes, cyber security, crimes, and all of that. So what does digital trust mean? It's really important to us. We're working on a couple of verticals, and we're hoping that, from an ASEAN level, we can look at what digital trust means for the region, right? And that includes cross-border data flows, data embassy, onshoring of data sovereignty. We're looking at AI safety and opportunity. It's all about trust, right? And the data movements and the data security. So digital trust and the economy of trust is something that we hope can be surfaced at the ASEAN level, as a key topic for us to be an all-encompassing theme for what we talked about.
I like that. Thank you very much. Perfect. Thank you. And the last person I would like to call upon is Hadri. The one thing that you like to see happen or achieve within the next 9 to 12 months.
Thanks, Harish. Actually, I just want to double down on what Sita said, which is the government side of the equation, right? And, I think, I've had, some of these conversations with Sivaram before about how, the whole government digital transformation should actually be part of the DEFA conversation. Because, even if you talk about things like digital inclusion, financial inclusion, and, anecdotally speaking, from my end of things, right, like my own personal experience with my parents, and them adopting like digital payment solutions and things like that, a lot of it was actually driven by the Singapore government actually initiating some of these things and then them becoming familiar with it. So I feel there's a whole conversation around government digital transformation that could be had in ASEAN, and that could actually even then unlock further, innovation downstream into the private sector as well, as you build more trust in technologies and things like AI and stuff like that. And the second thing I just wanted to say is, to respond on what Raymond said, we also really believe that digital trust is this big next conversation that we need to have in the region. I think, the Japanese started this whole conversation around data free flows with trust, but they haven't quite figured out, what trust means, right? And how do you operationalize that? So to the extent that, Malaysia takes that on as an ASEAN priority next year, that's certainly something that's super interesting and will be happy to support. Thanks.
Thank you. That's wonderful. And I think with that, I would like to bring us back to some concluding remarks from Ashish for this almost 2-hour session that we had. And I hope it was useful so far. So concluding comments from Ashish.
Thanks, Harish. So we've had a very illustrious today. I personally learned a few things. I thought I knew better today in enriched further. What we'd like to see is some sort of collaboration
real-time collaboration building out of this discussion. We've had Hilmi talk about 30 million numbers. We've had Jamie talk about 7 million numbers. Is there a collaborative plan that we could build here for capacity building, which leads into digital and a financial inclusion, let's say for 100 million people? And what would that plan look like in ASEAN? And if we were to collaboratively implement that as a public-private partnership program, who would be the key stakeholders of those programs? How can each one of us from the industry, from the government contribute to that? And if we have an action plan to build something like this, then I think it will be more meaningful. It doesn't have to be a 1-year plan. It could be a plan spanning over 3 years. And where can ASEAN Economic Forum as a collaborator come in and help collaborate this program? I mean, that's, I think, the key takeaway that I have for today. There is some thought that need to be put in here. There is some work, some documentation maybe from our end that we can share with you in a couple of weeks after this discussion. And hopefully this is just the beginning of our discussion. We will have many more discussions like this, and we look forward to building a better ASEAN with all of you. Thank you so much for your time, and Harish, back to you.
Thank you. And closing comments from Sita as well.
Thank you, again, also from my side. I think you saw me probably having a reaction when I heard what Raymond had to say, because you did not ask me about the one thing that I was wishing for, and it was exactly, I don't know, Raymond, if you can see me right now, it was trust. Because I wanted to say there's actually three things that can all be subsumed under the bigger header of trust that we need to build here. We all know that creating seamless digital trade, that's a big endeavor. It's a tall order for us to undertake. In ASEAN, public and private sector, other stakeholders need to engage in concerted efforts to make this work. And it's not something that would be easily finished. But knowing all of this, knowing it's a tall order, knowing it's unfinished business and a work in progress, trust is what binds everything together. And the three tenets of trust, two were mentioned. One I would like to add to what Raymond just said. One is, of course, cybersecurity. It's always the most intuitive one. It's one where we see most directly also how interconnected we are these days. Again, back to the IT incident that we had a couple of weeks ago. One of the points there is not just a cybersecurity issue, it's also a competition issue. It's also something where we need to, again, back to skills development, building the community here, those who are service providers as well, that we are not just reliant upon one or two providers. And again, there are platforms here in the conversation that do a great job. There are SMEs that you have mentioned, Ashish, that we need to build digital skills for. But what about the middle? And what about bringing those in, diversifying service providers so that we are not just having monopolistic structures? And that's one part of DEFA that is sometimes overlooked when we're looking at creating fairness and a level playing field. Second point, you mentioned it, is also, I think, a very pertinent discussion beyond the economy, which is online safety, safety aspects with respect to AI, deepfakes. You know, we have elections this year. It's a super election year. There's a lot that we can see how actually AI can do both good and bad. So that is another point. And the last point that I think Raymond did not directly mention is rights protection. So there's security, there's safety, there's rights protection. I work in consumer protection, so data protection is critical, and redress when indeed then these cyber incidents or breaches or other things happen where we then have no trust. What is our way as a consumer as well, and as a business perhaps as well, to seek redress and to be compensated if something goes wrong, if we are harmed, if we're losing money as well. So trust, I would like to echo this. And the second point that I think was very useful having this policy roundtable for is, of course, to build or to manifest, to consolidate relations, consultation, engagement between the public and the private sector. This is also, as you said, not the end of it. There can definitely be more done. In ASEAN in particular, we have still a lot of silos, we have sectoral egos, we have, this is confidential, we can't talk to you about that. But how are we going to make things work if we don't talk about it? No? So I think we should, we're also looking forward to having another policy roundtable later this year. In this case, it's going to be on likely the just transition, just energy transition, the opportunities we see in ASEAN for clean tech, for example, what would be the role for SMEs and other businesses there. So yeah, so thank you also again to all of the speakers for enriching this discussion and for the ASEAN Economic Forum for organizing this with us, and the capable moderator, of course, for guiding us through this.
All right, thank you. So with that, I think I would like to say thank you very much to all of you for participating enthusiastically. And I hope that I was able to poke and prod enough ideas to be flowing from the different participants. And I think we do have a laundry list of things to achieve within the next 9 to 12 months. Ashish, the ball is in your court now, so we need to start running with it. So with that, I'm very thankful for the time you spent. We went a little bit over time, but I think it's a useful conversation. I didn't want to cut it off. So thank you very much, and I look forward to seeing all.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, so I think one of the things, we want to take a group picture of everybody who's participating. So if you could just turn on a camera, I think the magic will be done by the engineers sitting around here. Okay, 1, 2, 3. I think, are we done? One more time. Everybody calls out. 1, 2, 3. Smile. Thank you. All right, excellent. Thank you all, and have a good day and a good week ahead. Thank you.
Thank you.